Well, hello, and thank you for joining us today at Redefining Real Estate. I'm Brian Dobbs. Lyndon Wilson is my co-host, and want to welcome him today.
Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Lyndon. How are you doing?
I can't complain.
Well,
Things
good
are
deal.
well. Yeah.
You know what? We're rock and rolling. We're making progress, moving the ball forward every day. So that's great, guys. We
Absolutely.
have a fantastic show for you today. I have known this guest for many years. We have spent many hours talking and discussing, and he is also a coach. I want to introduce you to William Sampson.
Good morning. Hey, Brian. Hey,
Good
Lynn.
morning, William. William, there you are. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing well. You guys?
Doing great, thank you. William, we go back quite a ways and had some fantastic discussions, great thought-provoking discussions. It's not just the casual surface level, just the small talk that a lot of us get engaged in, and we feel like we had a great conversation. So the things that I want to just really dive in today is that phrase that you used earlier when you said, and it was behind the scenes, but it was, are we communicating or are we connecting? And it was something like that. I butchered that. I know I did. So give me that phrase, and let's really go into this whole show and showing that part of connecting.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's all based on a book of John Maxwell's that is titled "Everybody Communicates, but Few Connect," and it's 5 principles and 5 practices dealing with learning how to connect with one another. In our world, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, and you can't influence somebody unless you can connect with them. And that's the basic premise of that. And it's something that I teach and I coach people through. So
that is awesome. And Lyndon, I know that we talk about this quite often. And I think I say that on every program. Because Lyndon and I talk about every day. So it's our buddy system. So, but this connectivity is important. How do we get more connected? And Lyndon, I want you to ask William some questions as well. But my first question to you, William, is how do we change that communication into a truly authentic connection where we're edifying one another, we're building one another up instead of, again, just staying in that surface level?
One of my somebody has posted something on social media before, and it says, if you could get rid of one thing in this world that would change things, what would that be? And the word I always use it come to is selfishness. And I think that's the perfect kind of segue into answering your question, is when we realize that when we're trying to connect with somebody, it's not about us, it's about them. And what we're there to do is to learn about them and to try to connect with them and find out, what do they know that I don't know? One of the things that you and I talked about earlier was, talking about if we can get people to connect with one another and just sit around the table and have an open conversation and realize that although their opinion may be different from ours, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just different. And when we can understand that about one another, then we can develop empathy for one another. And there's not a problem in this world we can't solve if we'll approach conversations, especially about difficult issues, that way. One of the things that we talked about earlier was on the board situation with nonprofits, that we're looking for diversity of thought, diversity of race, diversity of from every kind. And understanding that although there's somebody else that doesn't look like us or doesn't sound like us or doesn't have the same opinion that we do, doesn't mean that theirs are right or wrong or mine's right or wrong. It's just different. And that's kind of the basis of everything that I work with and teach, is when we can have those conversations, or at least have that thought process. So Brian, if I'm trying to communicate with you or connect with you, I want to know about you. I want to know what's going on in your world. I want to know what you think about things. So that's the basis, the jumping off spot.
Go ahead,
William. I was told many years ago that, and the mentor that I have that was his whole deal, is connections, and his process, which Zig Ziglar said, but if you give them what they want, you'll get what you want. And so we first have to find out what they want. And he always told me that opportunities are exposed when you get to know someone. Why is it that we struggle so much? Are we going into these conversations seeking more to be understood than to understand who we're talking to? I mean, is that the wall that we're having a hard time breaking through?
I think so frequently in today's world, we're pardon my French, but we're hell bent on digging our heels in and saying our opinion is right, and we listen to respond as opposing to listening to understand. And I think that's the bridge. That's the difference there. We're not interested in hearing what somebody else has to say. What we're interested in is hearing our opinion coming out of their mouth. And that's not, I mean,
I'm sorry. Brian and I actually shared that exact saying a couple of weeks ago.
We say that quite a bit.
I get so frustrated with watching the media and all the stuff that we're bombarded with today. And if we can just turn that noise off, turn off that squelch. Brian, you're too young to remember the CB craze back when you were a toddler. But I remember taking a vacation to Yellowstone in 1976. And I remember it was 76 because it was the bicentennial year. And there were a lot of people that were doing cross-country treks on bicycles. And I remember coming up over a hill in Montana or Wyoming and just seeing a peloton of bicycles for 2 miles. But one of the things that we did was we had a CB radio, because my stepfather had a little bit of a heavy foot, and we wanted to know where the police officers were. To make sure that we didn't get a speeding ticket while we're going. But that CB radio had a squelch button, and we could turn down the background noise. And I think if we can do the same thing with a lot of the media today, and just have I keep going back to the same thing. If we just have a conversation around the table and realize that the difference of opinions and yours is just valid as mine, it's just different, then that changes the whole dialogue and conversation.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'm going to point out, because I wrote down a note here on the connection, and number one is to learn, is to really go in there to seek to learn, to seek to understand versus respond. I talked to my wife, and in a marital relationship, there are a lot of times that let me just put it in my frame here. I make it a practice to utilize 3 areas here. So I'll talk to my wife and I'll listen to her and I'm like, honey, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to listen and respond? Or would you like me to listen and fix? So the listen and fix comes up very, very rarely. Okay. I didn't need to fix anything, and it wasn't being communicated to me because I needed to come and fix it. So that doesn't happen very often. The listen and respond comes up, fairly regularly, and so we can have a dialogue, which is fantastic. But for the majority, guess what? Just listening has been something that I've had to change, where I am a better listener, and I'm seeking to understand. I'm seeking to look at things different. Hence the title of the program, Redefining Real Estate. And when I look at the synonyms and the definition of that redefine, it's reconsider, it's reformulate, it's reevaluate, reinvent, rename, rethink, revisit, etc. When we're looking at when we're looking at truly connecting, I think there's another aspect at William and Lyndon on this, and correct me if I'm wrong or I'm seeing this different, because I do want you to validate my opinion, please, and just
so you
tell
want,
me
you
I'm
want
right.
your opinion to come out of his mouth, right?
I love that phrase, by the way. I think that's fantastic. But shouldn't we not only listen to understand, but also listen with the intention of building up and bettering that other person?
Oh, absolutely.
If we're trying to connect, I mean, truly, just, we might not agree with them, but just, if we could learn to just love unconditionally would be really cool.
One of the things that popped up on Facebook this morning was something I posted a couple years ago, and it was, and I'm going to forget the exact title verse, but as iron sharpens iron, so man sharpens man. And my question to guys out there was, what have you done lately to bring somebody else up? Because so often in this world today, we're interested in pulling people down to our level. And it's like one of the things my ex-stepfather used to say was, don't ever argue with a fool, because they'll bring you down to their level and beat you with experience. My challenge, he had a lot of interesting things to say, but
I like that.
a good bit of which are not fit to print. But my challenge to guys right now is, what are you doing to lift somebody else up? And even if you're just one or two steps ahead of somebody else, what are you doing to pull them along with you? Because right now there's so much chaos going on and just uncertainty in the world that a lot of people are lost. They're looking for direction. They're looking for something, which kind of segues into something I asked you about, was talking about the master class that I'm doing. I've got a curriculum. It's called Family Stress to Family Best. And I've got two. One is just a 30-minute freebie that I can do for church groups, school groups, any organization that wants to know about this. It's based on the DISC method of behavioral analysis, which I'm certified in counseling on. And then it's material from John Maxwell. So in the normal world, we get up in the morning, we have breakfast together, we go to school, we go to work, we come home, we have dinner, we chase the kids around extracurricular activities, wash, rinse, repeat throughout the week. We never spend a lot of time together. Well, right now we're forced to spend a lot of time together. And what this helps people do is understand different personality styles based on DISC, and how those personality styles respond under pressure, or in some cases react under pressure. The sad reality is, if people don't have a certain degree of self-awareness or emotional intelligence, and they don't have the ability to articulate how they feel about the way they're processing stress, sometimes right now it's turning into violence. And I'm a survivor of domestic violence, so this is something that's extremely passionate for me. But if we can just understand our kids, and it's designed to help us understand our children better, but we're all just kids of different sizes. So when we start to learn these things about ourselves, how we respond to stress, notice the tendencies in our kids to be able to figure out what personality style they are, and see how they're responding to stress, and then give parents some tips and techniques on how to, what activities do we help them? Would we get them to do to get them centered, and how do we connect with them at their level of giftedness? There was something I read out of and this is from my John Maxwell Bible this morning, and it's talking about the 3 M's of good parenting. And that's modeling, management, and memories. And under management, it's talking about a child. Good management is the ability to discern the uniqueness of a child and teach him or her accordingly. We're to train up the child the way they should go. Now, this may mean that we have to adapt our style depending upon the child's temperament and wiring. So that's what this presentation is all about, is helping parents understand this and be able to apply this to their kids. And the cool thing is, if they can do it with their kids, they can do it with our spouse, with our siblings. it's transferable to the workplace. We're all people. We're different, but we're predictably different. And when we can understand those differences, we can develop empathy for one another and understand that, look, just because you don't process things the same way I do, doesn't mean that yours is right or wrong, good or bad. It's just different.
Absolutely. One of the things, and to respectfully segue into here, is listening to styles. And I love the disc. I teach the disc. I've taught the disc for many years to real estate professionals and utilize it in the real estate industry because it's key. However, when we're looking at styles, I teach, William, that I really want you to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So I want you to understand how you're wired. So your natural way that you would respond via the disc, or your adaptive or reactive way that you would respond. But if you would know the other variations of how people naturally or under pressure or a situation, they adapt, then you're able to mirror that communication style. And guess what? You posture yourself to listen to understand, listen to learn, listen to better that person or better that scenario or situation. You're looking for solutions instead of just responses. And I'm not trying to hear my opinion out of somebody's mouth. I am genuinely interested or concerned or involved in that conversation. Lyndon, you talk about this a lot, and instead of just being
you just made me think of both of y'all made me think of something. Brian, you know that I talk and have taught in the professional realm the differences of being transactional versus relational, and I think that we have been conditioned to be transactional, and I've always just kind of connected that with professionalism. You know, that's what we do in the professional world. You're either relational and you take the time to get to know someone, understand them, understand what their needs are, understand how you can help them, because if you help them, they will help you. And then you have others that push for a certain result. That's all they're interested in, and they're trying to sell themselves and what they're doing to get that transaction. And William, what you just made me realize, and Brian, is that we do that in personal connections as well. I never thought of, because I think when I think transaction, I think monetary. When you're thinking professionalism, right? I'm looking for a sale. I'm looking for a revenue generating relationship, whatever that may be. Yep. But do we do that in our relationships? Are we transactional? When we're sitting down, talking to our kids, talking to our spouse, whoever, are we speaking to them because we're looking for a result that we want? Mm-hmm. It's a predetermined result that's going to make me happy, not necessarily them. What do you guys think about that?
You see this on, and I saw this on a television commercial the other day, where they're giving out French fries if the kid will eat a piece of broccoli. That's transactional parenting. I mean, think about it. Yeah. Just break it down. That's, if you'll do this, then I'll do that. And I think that's one of the things that I do with when I make friendships or I meet people, because after a few minutes of the conversation, you can tell if they're just trying to if they're going right at transactional or if they're trying to build a relationship. I had somebody connect with me on social media this morning, and literally within seconds of approving their profile, I get a sales pitch from them.
Yeah.
Then you bought, didn't you? You bought it.
He
bought two because he liked it so much.
I bet he did.
Selling financial services, and Brian knows I spent 15 years in that world. And other than real estate people and attorney, I've probably got more friends in financial services than any. But those are my top three, connections. Would be those attorneys, financial advisors, and realtors. So no, I didn't.
Okay, and one of the things, and this is what really struck me when we're looking at transactional. There's typically a result in mind, correct? So if it's in business, we're looking for money. And we've heard the excuse. So I mean, in church when I was pastoring and even going through Bible college, I would hear people say quite often, well, when I get money, I'll tithe. I'm wondering, and that's never the case, by the way. If you can't do it with $1, you won't be able to do it with 1,000. You won't be able to do it with 10,000. It doesn't work that way. But have we been conditioned so much in society that we are transactional with that little disclaimer in the back of our brain that says, well, when I get here, then I can be the real person, or I can be more genuine, I can be more authentic. And that struck me really hard today, because I think that we have that lie underneath everything that justifies our transactional behavior. Because when we get to that point, when we get to the American dream, when we get to the wealth part, when we get to the rich part or the power part, then I can be normal. Well, no, that it doesn't work that way.
Well, we're trying to negotiate everything we do, including sometimes even in our prayers. God, if you just do this for me, then I could be able to do kind of like what you said, Brian. God, please do this for me, and then I promise I'll be a good person. We really have become transactional, and we want to negotiate everything we do so that we get a return that's favorable for us. And that's the furthest thing away from being relational.
Right. So let's segue into another part, William, and you made the comment backstage, diversity of thought. Mm-hmm. So and then you have you told us your illustration. So go into that before I just botch it and tell your story.
Yeah, and I think this was in the context of boards within the nonprofit world. But the analogy, when I'm on stage, I use a beach ball because it's bigger and easier. But in this environment, I think this is where you were leading me to go. Yes. If we're talking about this pen is a topic of discussion, and if what you're discussing is the nib or the piece that goes over your pocket, and all you are talking about is that piece of the pen, and what I see is just a black cap, then as you're talking about this, I think you're nuts. I don't know what you're talking about, because you're not talking about what I see. Well, when we can take the time to learn how to come around to the other side of the table and see things from other people's perspective, this is connection. This is trying to connect with them and understand what it is that they see. There's not a problem in this world that we can't solve if we can have that diversity of thought and at a respectful level. We're both looking at the exact same thing, but just from a different perspective. And if I can get rid of my pride or my I would forget what the other word was, but if I can give up my pride and say, okay, well, maybe Brian is seeing something about this I don't see, and that's in business. We've got an issue with trying to move our businesses forward during Corona, and how do we come out of this, and how do we take care of our employees and all these things. Everybody at the table is there for a reason. I mean, if you look at Colin's book, Good to Great, when he boils all those companies down, what the underlying piece was that they all put the right people in the right seats and at the table before they decided where they were going. So once you can do that, everybody's got a different opinion on the same issue. And if we can look at that and listen to understand, then we can come up with the best solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, because we really need to have fresh eyes. And again, not to just belabor the point, but that was my heartbeat for real estate is to redefine how are we looking at how are we looking at our relationships, how are we looking at our family structure, how are we looking at our neighborhoods, our communities? Are we actually impacting them, or are we just living in survival mode, stuck in our house or closet or garage, trying to hope and pray that this thing passes and I can go back to my old norm? And that's one of the things that that I've really liked about our conversation here today, even though it's been short, but to really listen for not only different styles, through the disc on how somebody functions naturally and adaptive, but also listen for different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So, and great analogy, by the way, and illustration with your nebulizer and just teasing.
I don't think that's what it was.
Nib, it's the piece that sticks out over the front of your pocket. When you
Hey, I'm excited to be here. I learned something new today. I'm
telling you,
6 years old and always wondered what that thing was called.
Well, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm not even going to say that. But yes, thank you, William, for letting us learn something new.
And that kind of comes back around to the master class that I was talking about, because what this is going to teach people to do is initially the first session we're going to put everybody through just a basic disc profile so that they'll understand what their personnel style is. But then in each of the subsequent classes, we're going to do a deep dive into each one of the individual styles. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the blind spots? What are the fears? How do they respond under pressure? How do you communicate to that personality style? If you're a different personality style, if you're the same person, or if you're that personality style, how do you connect with the other three? So that then helps the individual develop self-awareness. It also helps them understand those people in the circle better, because until we understand who we are, we're never going to be the best version of ourselves that the people that depend on us need us to be.
Absolutely.
That, in my opinion, is a moral imperative in today's world. We have to know who we are, what we stand for, and then we can be that best version of ourselves that those people that depend on us need to be.
Totally. I want to ask a quick question. Yep. Quick question on that. Are we in the world today, William? With what you're saying is we have to know who we are. Are there too many of us out there trying to pretend to be what we think everybody wants us to be, and that's creating a huge problem for us?
Yeah. One of the other books I teach from is John Maxwell's The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, and it starts off with self-awareness. You got to know yourself to grow yourself.
Ooh, can I use that?
I want to tell you, William, you have more just one-liner snippets, and they're fantastic. And I know you're writing a book, so let's dive into this. So let's just go straight into talking a little bit more about you, William. What do you do? Where do you do it? Who's your audience, etc.? I know that's a lot of questions, but kind of go into a brief bio and
how many days do we have here?
We have about 3 minutes.
Okay, all right. The 3-minute elevator speech. My tagline is I build better humans. And I do that, like I said earlier, self-awareness and emotional intelligence is the cornerstone of every relationship that we'll ever have, both personally and professionally. And until we know who we are, we'll never be the best version of ourselves that the people that depend on us need us to be. The process that I use with individuals, clients, teams, corporations, is what is the title of my book. It's called Awake, and it's on the acronym of Awake. Assess your current situation, which is where we start with a DISC report with my clients. Welcome change, new thoughts, new ideas. So to welcome that change, but then acquire those new skill sets. Once we figure out where we are and we understand where we need to be, there's that tug of that rubber band, and Maxwell calls it the law of the rubber band. That until there's tension between where we are and where we want to go, we're not going to be going in the right direction. The K stands for knock out bad habits, bad thought processes, limiting beliefs. I think it was Viktor Frankl in his book said something about when we realize we can't change the situation, we're therefore compelled to change ourselves if we're going to make something different. And then if you'll do those 4 things, you'll experience greater success than you've ever had before. So that's the process of kind of who I am, what I do, and how I do it.
And you're also doing, you had to redefine your career. And Lyndon, we need to have William back on the show.
Yeah,
there's just a lot of stuff.
I want to have him on my show game day. Would love
Yes.
would love that.
Yeah, let's look at schedules. I mean, I love doing this. That's my high personality style. Give me a stump and a story in an audience, and I'm in my element.
So one of the things, and William, and I want to address this and just wrap this up, and then we'll wrap up today's program. The redefining, and then your ability to navigate some different channels has led you into more of not into more of, but an additional link where you're able to educate in the schools or some areas where the younger generation, young kids are learning the emotional intelligence and the importance of understanding DISC and understanding communication styles and I have to say kudos to you, because that's right up my alley. Love that. That's my heartbeat. So that's fantastic.
I'm not sure exactly how long we have, but so I'll blow through this pretty quick. I've got an after-school program that we're putting in some of the Fort Worth ISD after-school programs. A lot of these are going into the inner city, where kids don't actually have a lot of access to this type of learning and understanding. We're starting off with the DISC report for youth. We call it student success. We're reviewing interactions with family and teachers. We're unpacking something that a phrase or a quote that a friend of mine and I came up with, and Dana Wilson, if you're listening, half of this is yours. Our circumstances are no more responsible for our results or our actions than the mirror is for our appearance. So we're getting young kids to think into that, so that they can understand that where they are doesn't define where they can go. Teaching them about responsibility, emotional intelligence, how emotions impact their ability to make decisions, hope, motivation for growth and change, and the challenges are simply opportunities for learning. So those are the 6 modules for that course, and I'm doing it. It's called, my one program is Junction 56. We're taking kids from 5th grade into 6th grade that are going from elementary school to middle school, and then Junction 89 for kids that are leaving middle school going to high school.
That is awesome. Well, guys, we've had a fantastic program today, and we're getting some comments, and I appreciate both of you gentlemen. You've actually impacted my life. You make me think, which is awesome. You mentioned a scripture earlier, William. Iron sharpens iron, just as one man to another. And I can just tell you that both of you have a major impact in my life, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being on the show today. So we are going to wrap it up, and I just want to wrap it up with the 4 things that I wrote down. I think it was really important for us. 1, listen to understand, and number 2, listen so you can help better a situation, a circumstance, or even the person that you are connecting with. And then when you listen to the different styles of communication, again, something really important when you're in business, whether you're at your family event or you're at a grocery store nowadays, just if you listen to the different styles, then you'll also begin to listen to open up to different perspectives. So one of the reasons that we created Redefining Real Estate was to be able to create a process of redefining and realigning and looking at things a little different. How can we leverage ourselves and build strong families and strong neighborhoods and strong communities? Thank you so much for listening to Redefining Real Estate. Today, I'm Brian Dobbs, your host, signing off. I'll see you next week.